All right, guys, welcome back to the 12th episode of the Anything Goes podcast. We were technical difficulties last week, but we're back this week. I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Kev Carter. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, man, it's been a while, it's been a while, but I'm blessed, man.
Good, good, good. And we brought in our very own professor, Mr. M. How you doing, sir?
I'm just here, son. I been listening, been having fun. I'm glad to have been back.
Oh my God, good to have you, Mr. M, man. I know you've been rather busy in the last couple of weeks, but it's always good to have you, man.
Yeah, always good to be on.
hmm So let's get started with our first topic. You know how we always do it. We got to do the F1 talk. You know, we missed the last week's Syrian Grand Prix and the Hungary Grand Prix took place today. Both won by Mr. Lewis Hamilton. Both very commanding performances by him. Mr. Kev, thoughts on the performances by Lewis?
Well, uh, can't single out today's performance. I can't single out just to rate their performance. I mean, from the start of the weekend, both last weekend and this weekend, he just been on the pace. Like, he just had this look in his face, like, seriousness. He means business. Like, that first race, he was disappointed
Mm-hmm.
with the way how it went with the penalties, and I guess, but he's a true champion. He doesn't blame anyone but himself, and he had this look that he come back. He's the king of F1, so and that's his crown. So he has this demeanor about him now, where he's just trying to dominate everything. I would say he's probably one of the, if not the best, pole setter in history. He has the most poles now.
With good margin
So
too.
it's not just a race day thing where he would a couple of races in the past where he was known for coming through the field or whatever. He's stamping his mark now from practice straight through to qualifying and straight through to the race, and it was again today another dominant display.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you could have asked for more as a fan. The race had less DNFs than the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Last week was pretty much more or less the same,
Right.
but it was nevertheless it was very exciting, and a lot of good battles throughout the field. So I thoroughly enjoyed the race.
Yeah. I must admit though, I think first race was very hectic and chaotic, but you must admit these three races have been pretty good. You know, a lot of fans
Yeah,
are enjoying these races. They got good midfield battles, and
yeah,
even though Hamilton is ran away first, two races, they also had interesting strategies that play, and they ran today. Could have played the
yeah,
nasty factors. So, very
yeah,
enjoyable racing so far. Really enjoying the season. Uh,
yeah.
Mr. Kev, we all know you're a Ferrari man, Mr. Anti, Lewis Hamilton. But how you feel about his two performances so far? And as a Ferrari fan, can you please detail how you feel about how Ferrari are doing currently this season?
Um, Not a fan of Ferrari this season. I will start there.
Wait, Mr.
S-
Manager,
see,
Mr. M, do you switch allegiances, or it just that you disappointed?
I think it's more of a disappointed. In terms of what you saw last week at the Styrian Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm,
When Leclerc and Vettel had their altercation,
mm-hmm,
Mhm.
and then seeing how I shouldn't say altercation, I should say more of an interaction. Um, and then seeing how they performed this week.
mm-hmm.
Vettel just wasn't there, and Leclerc was running what 14th, 15th back down the line. I think it was more of a interesting race when you take the usual players and see what it was,
Mm-hmm.
and you take it for what it was in comparison to the previous seasons. Yes, unfortunately, Lewis was on top again, but that is when
Unfortunately,
the
oh my God.
when
Unfortunately, yeah.
situations seem to prove themselves. I've always said that Lewis is a good driver. He's a good individual, but I think he's driving for the wrong team, and I think he needs to prove himself at another team. And I will not take back those comments. Um, he's great. I just think in order to be able to show that greatness somewhere, he needs to find himself at another team. And today, I saw him checking back out the Red Bull from Max, and he was just wondering how he was able to get it done. That Red Bull is an amazing machine. What the guys did from qualifying, to be able to get it back to Max in time to be able to do what he had to do
He
was
was
just amazing stuff.
massive the wall today and was almost ruled out.
Exactly, and it was good, and I realized that Hamilton and Max kind of like have this 1-2 going constantly, and you kind of see how it's a situation when you really take a look at it. It's more of a budding rivalry, and it's something that I would like to see from a rivalry turn into a partnership. And maybe who would be the number one driver if the two was to be on the same team. Who knows? Maybe if Max and Lewis decide that they want to go back down to some place like McLaren or to Racing Point or to maybe Williams and see where it takes them and build up a team. They'll be two phenomenal drivers doing the best coming up through the grid once again. And I think it'd be something to
But Mr.
see.
M, Mr. M, I had asked you one question. Do you think at Lewis's age of 35, it'd
Right.
be reasonable for him to try to go to a lower team to build it up with such a short time left on his career? Is that a
I
fair
think
criticism of Hamilton? Or do you
I
think
think
it'd
ultimately
be better
what
for him to like run a team as like a owner or something like?
um ultimately when you see it, Hamilton is going to make that step away from Mercedes ultimately, and I think he started to think about it. I know he
As into
signed previously.
step
He
away from
signed.
Mercedes as in driving, or step away from Mercedes as in racing for them and going somewhere else, like possibly.
Well, that's what I'm getting to at the point. He is starting to think about moving away from Mercedes. I know he has a next contract period to go through, but what comes after that, I don't see much more from Lewis coming after that. And I think he's going to move in the direction of what previous drivers have going to do. I can't see Lewis really pushing to really want to own a team. So I think he's going to become something more of a either maybe a joint shareholder in a team, or maybe he's going to try to give his expertise in other areas. But you're not going to primarily hear from him once he steps away, in my opinion. He's just going to get his championships, know that he was one of the best in the world. I would give that to him because at the end of the day, he would have won his titles, and then he's just gonna disappear, travel the world, probably try to date Rihanna again, and settle down and have children. That's pretty much what's gonna happen.
I think Mr. M is Lewis Hamilton's next future like planner. So
Well, if
Apparently.
he wants to offer me the job, I would take it. As I said, I am not opposed to Lewis as the individual. I like the Lewis the individual. I just can't stand Lewis the F1 driver. And once he moves away, me and him will be the best individuals ever on this planet, and that's for sure.
well, Mr. M, I don't want you promoting your brand, but since you don't, I want to know your name. I don't know how that would help sell your brand, but we appreciate the effort of
What
the Anything Punch
I
podcast. But
I, 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 I never said I'm not for one people knowing my name, but it's a situation when one looks at it. I think there's a conflict between the names that appear on this podcast and mine, and I think I just seek to separate myself because I know my brand. So you see, it's brand management at its best.
I mean, I
Keep
mean,
them always keep them
we talk a
always
little
wanting more. Remember that.
you talk a little reckless on the show, so I do understand. So I talk future drivers. I want to talk about some guys that were a bit underrated going into the season, but have done pretty well in the last two Grand Prix. Let's start off with Mr. George Russell, who, despite not having the proper race pace due to being in the Williams, has shown very good qualifying. Uh, Mr. Kev, what do you think about George Russell? Do you think that we could be looking at a potential world champion, or is it too early to call?
Man, I think we're a champion may be a bit of a stretch at the moment. However, though, I was very impressed with the with his consistency and the fact that it's a lower tier car and he's being able to manage it and get the most out of it. I think this is 3 races in a row now that he's gone without any DNS or anything
Correct. Yeah.
as such. Yeah. Um, I've also been very impressed though with the Racing Point cars though.
Pink Mercedes.
Yes, I like that. Lance Stroll and Perez have been quite brilliant since the start. I mean, it's so strange to say the start of the season, but it's really the start of the season at this point. But
Yeah.
they've been brilliant. Um, I think they outperformed the Red Bull actually. It was the first race or the second race?
First.
The first race, yeah.
And they're pretty
Which was
close. I mean, to be fair, Mr. Lance came fourth today, so he came above Albon. Since Mr.
yeah,
Perez had a bit of a bad start today, but I believe if he had a better start, he'd be higher up as well.
yeah,
Albon was. I remember Perez was challenging Albon until he hit the front wing last Grand Prix. So I mean, the pink
yeah,
Mercedes is showing a lot of the potential they have, and I think
yeah.
someone like Sergio Perez, who I've always said is a very good driver. It's good to
Mhm.
see him in a car. It might not be top car, but it's good to see him in a machine where he can be competitive and fighting for podiums on a regular basis. So that's also very good to see.
Yeah, but I mean, the big guys, Leclerc came 11th today. Lando Norris and
Yeah,
Sainz 14th and 9th respectively.
yeah. McLaren's off the pace
And
today. So yeah. So it also shows the
Semi
consistency in
racing,
the racing point for a
yeah,
small team. It's amazing.
yeah, but they done wonders.
Yeah.
They
I,
even beat Ricardo as well and the
oh, I
Renaults.
mean, talking about
Yeah.
Ricardo and Renault, Mr. M, McLaren had launched a second protest against the pink Mercedes. Do you think that is a valid complaint, Mr. M, or do you think it's just a bit of jealousy from Renault?
Um, Renault has. I know it was coming once again today. Anytime that you see Racing Point step foot ahead of Renault, you always see this coming. I think it's something that Cecil, if I remember his name correctly, really has a problem with. It's kind of like this pettiness that's going on because it is this belief that they have this manufacturing mechanism that is going on that Mercedes is secretly helping them out as their third team apparently. So I don't see the basis on it in my end. If you have that competitor's edge, if it's all by the books that you can go and you can buy parts, buy engines, buy aerodynamic information or get the best mechanisms being placed for your car, I don't see anything wrong with it. Renault's only problem is that they manufacture their own parts and it's a problem for them. But if you're looking to cut costs and buy parts, then nothing's wrong with that. So I don't see it. It brings more competition back into it. And now that you see Racing Point is now at a stage where they're more competitive, and most people like Renault can't really handle that at this stage.
Right. I remember the FIA did clarify the legality of the car prior to testing during testing in March, and then prior to the start of the Austrian Grand Prix. So I find it strange that you launched two back-to-back complaints when to me you should have posed the legality of the car early up. It's just like with Red Bull and Mercedes with DAS. Like, why did you wait to Austria to then argue the legality of DAS? Yeah, I don't think is the right move to
I
make.
think I think there's a bit of a pettiness, and it's
Okay.
just trying to bring some promotion to Renault. And especially trying to promote Daniel still. And Daniel really isn't proving himself recently. He's not living up to his expectations.
So you would say that
Um,
Daniel isn't living up to. Do you think is Daniel's fault for underperforming, or do you think the Renault isn't up to snuff?
I think Daniel's a fantastic driver. I just don't think that Renault is living up to Daniel's expectations. Um, as with any team, they always have a plan, but I don't think when you really look at on-track performance that Renault has really lived up to what they've really set up for themselves. They've had either on track challenges, off track challenges, driver challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been a mess basically.
Okay. So we have a live comment here from Mr. Fadaport. He said M sounds like he has a political agenda in mind. Do you want to comment on that, Mr. M?
a political agenda into Formula One.
Well, that's
um,
well, that's a comment that Mr. Fatherport left. I'm not too sure he
well,
clarified.
I have a political agenda in mind in terms of Formula One. I think one of the things I would do is to bring some investors and transform certain areas of Barbados or maybe parts of Jamaica or Trinidad, maybe Grenada, and make a F1 track. Why can't we have maybe F2, F1 racing in the Caribbean? I think people would enjoy it. We've seen what happened a couple of years ago when we actually had a Ferrari try in Barbados. It was massive.
Hmm.
I think we could build on to the F1 season and the rally season by having a Caribbean um a track. See what happens. So maybe that would be my political agenda. I am putting it out now into the public domain that if this idea is ever brought forth, it was put here first on this podcast. Um, so credits to those who have me on as a guest. Just reminding you, it's been here first. So all royalties at me. And then it was split evenly among the members of this cast as we go along. So
I,
yes, that would my political agenda.
I wouldn't hold my breath on the splitting the money, but okay. A few other things before we have to go before we move on in the Grand Prix. We saw Mr. Lewis Hamilton retake the lead of the championship. What do you think this does to Valtteri Bottas? Do you think that he can bounce back, or do you think that Valtteri will show the cracks that he exhibited in the last few seasons? I'll start with Kev. Go ahead, Mr. Carter.
Right. So here's my take on it. Right. Well, this is what you expected when the season started. The first race of the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, I don't know. Bottas is a very good driver,
Mm-hmm.
but when it comes to consistency and dynamism, I would say that Hamilton is above all. Obviously, um, our guy, Mister P. You know who I mean. He would have had an argument saying that this is going to be a very tough year for Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
You remember when he posted that in the Formula One chat, Arthur?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes, I
And
did. Yes, I did.
I was like, is that really going to be the case?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. Like in
But
terms
I
of
thought
main,
Mr. P was a Hamilton supporter.
he is, but
Mm-hmm.
he was. I think he was just trying to. I don't know. Either downplay things, either use reverse psychology, or I don't know. I guess he's just looking for a competitive season, probably. But that's him being hopeful more than anything else, because we know that when it comes to mental strength, Hamilton is really in a class of his own. So I don't know. I just think like I have a strong feeling that it's going to be very hard for Bottas to bounce back. And the only person that can beat Hamilton really is himself, right? I know Mr. M may be a bit annoyed with my comments, but it's the truth. So yeah, that's how we see it.
A bold statement by Mr. Carter. But
Hmm.
Mr. M, we have a question again for the live chat. Uh, Fruction said a Caribbean track is a good idea. However, small countries like Barbados and Trinidad might not have enough space to hold a track. Um, do you think a country like Barbados and Trinidad could be hold a Grand Prix number one and two? Do you think it would be financially viable for those countries?
I get the comment when it's too small, and that is true. Barbados and maybe parts of Trinidad are too small. But I think with the enough another idea, if you stick to certain areas, maybe within Jamaica, you could pull it off. I think there's a viability to bring not just to the country holding it, but to the Caribbean on a whole in terms of that additional tourism. Because when we look at racing events, we see how individuals flock to it, and if you package it as an ideal weekend or maybe a week where you get to meet the drivers, typical Formula One stuff. You can incorporate it with rally as well, incorporate some dirt bike racing, some track events, some race and meets, stuff like that, scrutineering, stuff like that, and you will see how individuals just flock. You can make it a number one event just globally, and you will see how people just quickly try to catch up to you. Something that would rival that maybe in a traditional F1 circuit would be like something like Singapore or um the
Australia,
one
Australia Grand Prix,
the other track the one with the really expensive yachts. I can't remember the name right
Monaco,
now.
me high school
Monaco,
red.
right? Yeah. How it's really like that. How certain drivers just look forward to certain events. Nobody really looks forward to Silverstone. That's all. Nobody looks forward to Hungary.
I don't know
You're
about that,
going,
Sir,
you're
Sir,
going.
Sir,
That
Sir
that is
Silverstone
not
has a
true.
very large following.
Well,
Sir,
Silverstone.
Mr. M, I
Yeah,
know people that went to Silverstone. It took them 3 hours to get to Silverstone. That's how
well, fine.
hard it is. And Silverstone and Britain has a heavy F1 fan base.
Well, it does. Yes, I
Now,
want to
if you say
agree on that.
Sochi, I think that's actually kicked off the calendar by honest opinion. That
That's true.
Azerbaijan, like, just get it over. Mr. Fatherport asks, so a CARICOM like event, do you think that could work for Formula One or
When he
motorsport in general?
when he says Caricom Lake event, exactly what does he mean? I think that's the question to answer. Is it like by overall Caricom, or is it like by just Caribbean countries? Like you have different events in different territories, because that in itself is also be a good idea.
'Cause I
In terms
Go ahead.
of certain countries are better for rally than others, so you could jump over to this if the air travel is better,
Mhm.
or if you want to hold one event in every country, or the same country, I should say, then that is something like also to look at. But a Caribbean event, yes, if you package it well enough, you could do hotel stays, you could have beach or street festivals, stuff like that. That would really make things off and popping, basically, for lack of better young terminology.
Okay, all right. But before we end off on the F1 discussion, okay, your thoughts on Valtteri Bottas? Can he win the championship?
My thoughts, no, Bottas cannot win a championship. As I've
Straight to
mentioned,
the point.
Bottas is just like Vettel at this stage. His mind is gone. And I think he's just going through the motions at this stage. He knows that every single track meet he will hold third position. He knows that Verstappen will be on his heels. He knows that Verstappen will ultimately pass him. And I think when one really tries to look at it, he is going to be in that situation where he's just going to mentally give up until something can take him out of his mind. He's just going to be at that stage when he knows he's just going to be holding third, fourth consistently. And if any other team, such as Racing Point, really catch themselves, you may even see him slip in further. I don't
Okay,
think Bottas is going to win at this stage.
okay,
Yeah,
all right.
but in all fairness, though, we still have to bear in mind that it's a shortest season and he's still only 5 points behind Hamilton. So,
Yeah,
in the case, it would be a case though where Hamilton will have to beat himself, and Hamilton will have to probably step up, and he will have to.
Let how Barcelona have Real Madrid title.
Oh God, don't say that.
All
Yeah,
right, all right, all right,
yeah,
all right. Let's move on.
but yeah.
You want to finish up your point?
No, I was just saying that going forward is going to be very interesting, but it's really up to Hamilton, in my opinion.
All right.
Yeah, that's about it.
All right, switching gears.
Yeah.
Literally, we're going to talk about MotoGP, but I think we'll put that to the end.
Mm-hmm.
We have a man very knowledgeable in this topic, so I want to ask them about this. Environmentalism for profit. This is something that I was thinking about recently. Due to there were rumors circulating that Apple wanted to remove the charge brick from the upcoming iPhone releasing in 2020, and talks about Samsung wanted to remove the charge brick from the Galaxy 21 for obviously 2021. And they noted that e-waste is a probable cause. And there was a large outcry on the internet, even by some loyal Apple fans, which I was glad to see that they weren't just taking the nonsense as usual, like the headphone jack situation, and they were against it. So I want to ask Mr. M, do you think that some of these large companies use the plate of environmentalism solely as a profit mechanism, and how should we stop it? Because I believe that
Um,
absolute environmentalism should be pure, in my opinion.
do do companies use environmentalism basically as a scapegoat?
Yeah, to make profit,
Uh,
to remove features, to make things more expensive, solely to make profit and in the name of helping the environment.
okay, well, yes and no. Alright, so let me start with the no first.
Mhm.
Many companies have recognized that there's this movement that they have to undertake within themselves, whether internally or externally. There's a matrix that is known within the finance world that is becoming more and more known as the ESG matrix, which is the environment, social, and governance matrix. In that rank companies in terms of how they perform. So it's a situation when one looks at it, how companies perform in terms of these metrics. Environmentalism. Um, Investors will look at places like Apple, Google, Samsung. How best are they performing in ESG? Are they performing? Have they cut back on their carbon emissions? What about their factories? Do they do stuff? Do they are they keeping up with green principles? Can they invest in them with green bonds and stuff like that? There's a lot more behind it, but I'm just going over the basics at this stage. Social is basically the same thing. Governance looks at who's the makeup of the board, who looks at exactly how best the board is performing in relation to the direction it's taking the company forward, and so forth. So, in terms of no, do companies do that? Companies have to follow this because it's basically the direction in which the world is moving. You will realize that investors leave from you if you don't follow these metrics, if you don't follow these ways, because of sustainable finance mechanisms and sustainable bonds and green bonds, which is something that costs more in the long run. It's in itself its own market that you can more or less derive and make safe investment into a company. So companies have to make sure that they follow them.
Mhm.
So in a way, the environmental aspect is something that companies actually follow. No, in terms of doing that, yes, companies also, on the other hand, do look to price gouge. There was a couple of articles I was reading either earlier today or yesterday where companies are ensuring that they are taking new methods of recyclable plants or recyclable materials that are slightly more expensive
Mhm.
and passing that cost on to the competitor because it's a method of making more money for them. So they make more money on the manufacturing end, but in a way use cheaper materials, cheaper labor mechanisms, cheaper boxing or wrapping for the product to arrive in, which is degradable or biodegradable, and then at the same time they pass that cost on. So if you at the same time you want to buy a phone also, you realize it doesn't have a headphone jack, it doesn't come with a charger, but yet still you're gonna see in the case that this phone is being made with sustainably sourced products, then you're gonna have that problem because they're gonna pass that cost on to you because it's sustainably sourced. Sustainably sourced is also a new in thing. You gotta go to Shafat now, you gotta ask for straw, you gotta ask for
Now most of these
fork.
companies need to cease
So
the
it's going to
production
become
of
that
silicon
challenge
graphite
when you
and use
look at
gallium
things
graphite
going
instead.
forward.
Higher heat
Exactly what is
resistance
going to
than
happen
silicon.
when companies say that they want to pass that cost on to you is something we need to look at more often than not.
All right.
So yeah.
All right. We got a question from the live chat. Um, Fruction said, companies such as Tesla, where they include heated seats in their vehicles, but the owner must pay additional $200 to activate them. So I guess
Yeah.
he's trying to say that that's a form of trying to get money of the consumer.
Is in a way I think like actions like that. I'm not a gamer anymore really, but it's if I would apply a method to that. It would be like you buying a game and then you have to, pay to get the downloadable content.
And he done a copy
Um,
on the disc already, which was an issue that happened back in the PlayStation 3 era with Street Fighter, I believe.
exactly, because what's the point of you shelling out all this money, maybe upwards of 45,000, and then you get the upgrade, which you now have to pay for some more. And everybody, when they want certain products, they're gonna want everything because nobody's gonna want to be riding about in a Tesla during winter and not have that um warm seats or stuff like that. So heated seats.
Even my dad, well, maximum I heated seats, and that was from 2009. So you don't know how that is.
Exactly.
That was a nice feature. I love
So
that heated seats. Um, and I think he said those companies that need to cease the production of silicon graphene and use gallium graphite instead. I'm not too sure. I know a little bit in their talk, but I'm not too sure if that's it for CPUs or not. Mr. M, are you familiar with those forms of silicon or production?
no, but what I just see is looking at is the cost of sourcing them. Because I think when you look at the cost of sourcing them, you have to look at it in a situation as to will this cost more or is this better at being able to allow the device to perform better? And if it allows the device to perform better, then I'm gonna pass that cost on. Basically,
He said
because
in
anything
regard to chargers, so maybe it's a better way of charger.
right, so yeah, so it would probably allow it to hold the heat better or conduct the heat better or something like that. And then ultimately, no company ever holds cost onto itself. They always seek to pass that on. And if I gotta charge you an additional $15 to be able to say you know got faster charging or you could do um wireless charging, then you're gonna get that.
Right. So,
Mm.
Mr. Carr, do you have any thoughts on the topic of environmentalism for profit? We are both laymen on this topic on Mr. M. So, do you have any thoughts on the matter?
Well, as you would notice, it's more Mr. M criteria. It is more his forte, but I will chip in and say though that I really love the idea, and moving forward though, I think most companies will push the idea and the conception of environmental
Sustainability.
gaining profits through different environmental measures or whatever. Um, and I do really like the perspective, and I think the future is very bright in terms of companies using it, etc. Yeah, that's all I would say on the
To
matter.
make money, it's like who's a shareholder, you like to see these men come and theories to get some more cost at the consumer. Like you trying to say?
Yeah, precisely,
Or
precisely,
you want to be rich,
precisely.
so I gotta follow you plan and get rich too. This poor life ain't working out.
Correct.
My problem is just I think a lot of it is being pushed to make money. Like we discussed with the charger being removed for the phone. I think there are rumors that Apple have kind of backtracked on that idea. But I think the thought of e-waste to me is something that I've always found kind of a bit silly. Like if that's the case, why not tell the person, it's okay, bring back your old iPhone, we get $100 off, and bring the old charger and have the new one. I think that's a way of doing it too, but it's more profit driven. I think also too, most people with their old charger just like leaving them in a drawer that you put it in the desk at work. I don't think people really just throw them out. Like I still got a lot of chargers for my old phones that I don't even use anymore. But I still have them just in case. Like if my charger goes bad or anything, it'd be slower than the one I have. It'd be painful because it's not a fast charger. But I still keep them. So I don't think that that's the right look. I think that's more a way of making money. But I still think that companies could find a bit more basically more sustainable. In terms of packaging, having boxes that we throw them out, they degrade faster than instead of staying in the environment for 10, 15, 20 years. Especially on things like cornflakes boxes and stuff. I think those things should be degrade very quickly, but we all know that those things still take around for a while. We had the drive to remove plastic bags, but what I'm finding is that you could still purchase them. So which I find is a problem because if you say plastic bag is damaging to the environment, it is not degradable, it's harming the turtles, and since we're an island that's damaging to our coral reef and our marine life, then why can I purchase a plastic bag? Like I think it's to me more of a money making mechanism than actually caring for the environment. I don't know if Mr. M can counter that point or could change my belief system on that. But I think it's more a way of making money.
It's ultimately going to be a way to make money. So let me see if I could deal with the plastic bags first. I remember the old plastic bags we had, the old Julian and the um Cherish, not the Cherish. There was another one, Chanel.
Yeah, Mr.
Um,
M, my mom got things tied up in those and they're still hold up.
exactly. Those old plastic bags were just durable. They go nowhere.
Mm,
But if you look at the new ones we have now, we see that they are biodegradable. They
mm,
break off after a good couple of months and stuff like that. So it's still a bit of progress. I don't really like them because they get very messy,
mm,
and they still end up in our water supply.
mm,
We still see issues where plastic is even at the deepest depths of our ocean, at the bottom of the Marianas Trench.
mm,
We see them come up in whales and wrapped around nets of turtles. So we have farther to go. The wheel of progress is long, but we are turning it. I remember when we used to have the issues of box juice, and now we have Tetra Pak.
mm.
We used to have straws, and now we have more
Man,
biodegradable
I hate
straws.
these plastic straws. These paper straws to me, it's tasty paper in them. I just do not like them. I think there needs to be a better solution.
Unfortunately, that's the direction we are going in, unless you want to buy a metal straw,
Why do I have
which
to
would
buy a
be
metal
your own
straw?
personal straw. Well, there you go.
No, but you
And
see, no, but is that not issue? Should it not be made that you don't taste the paper? Is that not like an oversight?
well, you can't get away from it. When you had a traditional straw, you taste the plastic.
But I mean, you hardly taste that. Like,
But you
uh,
got conditioned to tasting the plastic.
I think you capping on this one right now. I don't know what tasting the plastic straw, right? I don't know what you're talking about. I think you capping.
You tasted the
But
plastic, but
but what you
at the
say
same
with a paper straw, it degrades so fast. You be very sip on this stuff, and you bring it two poles, and you think it's like meshing in your mouth.
I never had that issue.
Well, maybe not. Maybe you got too much saliva in my mouth. Maybe you need to curse people some more. But I just don't find them viable. Like I don't think it's a good idea. Like I understand you want to help the environment, but I think if you're gonna cover the alternative, I think the alternative should just be as good or better. And I think
Well,
a lot of it is being done to put an image, but I don't know if it's actually better. But whatever.
ultimately there are people who are still working on it because your concern has been noted. The same issue when we first introduced the food containers in Barbados.
Mhm,
How we realized that they started to leak after a while because they were so thin and degrade so quickly after usage. Um, so there are different types of straws. You could get straws that have been made out of tin, straws that are metal. I think I've heard individuals looking into research of using sargassums in terms of researching straws and packaging. So there is research going on.
Man,
So
we're not
we'll
give me a
see what
sippy,
comes
we're
out.
not give me a sippy lid like in Starbucks. I could drink my drink off of that. I don't mind a sippy lid.
Well, you always go and buy one and see what it takes, or you could petition your favorite establishment, or maybe all of them, maybe the government, and have them put it into policy. But
Or,
one thing I do want to touch on,
or maybe you don't drink much soft drink and you lose some weight.
maybe do, maybe. One thing I do want to touch on though is what you mentioned in terms of the cost of products.
Hmm,
Um, we all know that when you go to buy something,
hmm,
it always has a upstanding cost.
hmm,
Let's say you go and buy a cell phone and it costs $2,000 and the charger comes with it, headphones, so on and so forth.
hmm,
The phone lasts, and then you realize that you want to go and probably it has an issue, or
hmm,
you want to change the charger, so on. That charger costs nothing to that company.
hmm.
That cost is
Couple cent,
included in the phone.
maybe $1 at most. It's not much in manufacturing cost.
Yeah, and it's always tossed onto you. Same thing with the headset.
Hmm,
It's very cheap materials that's supposed to last a certain amount of time.
hmm,
No company is going to say, "Oh, let me spend $50 to get you to send that back to me."
hmm,
It's easier for me to take that money
hmm,
and then, like, yeah, send you a new phone.
hmm,
Because that's ultimately what it's about. And I think when it comes to issues of e-waste, we need to make it into policy. At least that is at the global level, regional level, as somebody mentioned, the area of CARICOM, or
hmm,
at a national level where we say, you know what, let's take these electronic materials, dispute them. There are some components inside, like gold or whatever. Let's see how best we can resell them on the international market. Let's repurpose these technologies. Let's maybe even build our own phones. Let's create software. Let's see who donates stuff like that, and go in the direction of Huawei. Who's to say that we in Barbados can't develop our own technology? Let's see where that goes.
Another question I have for you: do you think that we should look for more sustainable electronic products? Like, I know it might, companies may not like this, but back in the day, people had phones, especially in the United States, for a year and between, and they toss it out, get a new one. Every 2 years, get a new one. Every 2 years, get a new one. Do you think that we should look to shift from that model into a more, let's say, every 4 year model instead? Because the new phones are more expensive. Let's be real. Like, phones prices to me, I think, are too expensive, in my opinion. So you think that we should move to a phone that's more up to date for longer? I mean, and I'll do fair to Apple. They do support their devices for a long time, like 5 years. I mean, most companies dump their phone after a year as support. So for 5 years, it's good support. I mean, I got a MacBook now, and I'm still getting updates for it, and this is about 6 years old. So do you think that should be another way that we should look to curb e-waste if you're going to make products more expensive? And a lot of companies are switching to services to make money. Do you think that that could be also another thing that they should look at?
Alright, so the second question first, a lot of companies should switch to services to make money. I think there are a lot of ways in terms of companies to make money in terms of examining what current features or what is the feedback coming from customers. I am not certain if unlike Apple, how many other companies listen to their real customers in certain areas. I see Nokia still pushing the game, and that is still like a nostalgic thing. And you only really hear outcry from certain providers or manufacturers when it comes to issues such as chargers or um, headphone jacks. But basically, services I think is in a way it could go. But ultimately, what you just suggested is going to be upset capitalism and competition. I think companies, especially Apple and Samsung, will appreciate that. Other companies, maybe smaller down the line, would recognize it's a way that they could innovate in a more consistent basis, get stuff more ready for 3 or 4 years down the line. But ultimately, if you're trying to do it year by year, it's going to be a problem. And we see now how there's no real innovation or improvement.
There's a lot of
But
stagnation in the mobile
everybody,
phone market.
yeah, it is that exactly. And everybody wants to be that keeping up for the next individual. Everybody wants to say, "Oh, I got the iPhone 2020," and because it's a show off thing to have that new phone.
Because also more of a brand in a way rather than an actual product.
Exactly. Um, and that's basically what it's about. And I think companies thrive off of that because ultimately I get you to get up and go and buy my product. You show it off to your friends. Your friends are like, "Oh, I want this." But if ultimately you look at your friend like, "You still got that phone? 3 years now?"
Yeah.
Nobody in the building taking you on that sorry. And I think companies would recognize that that's an issue, but it would help in the area of e-waste. It would create more sustainability because you have an opportunity now to ensure that your phone is better prepared, lasts longer, is more electronically viable, especially in the area of the battery, which in itself poses a challenge sometimes for a lot of people who has to charge their phone every day. So in a way, if we could go back in the direction that we used to be, like when we had the old Nokias, when we used to have to charge them once for every 4 days, that was good. Maybe not even so much once a week.
Yeah. But battery technology,
That
like, remember, those phones have smaller screens, and now we have more powerful
yeah,
upgraded screens,
and
and the phones do much more
exactly
now than then. So,
exactly
but there are
your
efforts
your
being placed into
phone
that. There are efforts being placed into that field, but the technology is still a ways out, and I don't feel it's a general rush for the consumer anymore. It's like to
it
me,
is
it's like supersonic travel. Like technically, Concorde 1960s technology, we could do it better and cheaper. No, but is there a real push for it? Not really. So I think a lot of companies aren't really pushing that to the forefront. I think if everyone was banging on the doors saying, "Yeah, we want phones to last 2 3 days again," that technology be provided. But I don't think it's a major push there. We Mr. Fuchshan talked about Tesla earlier. I want to ask you something. Um, in terms of electric vehicles, when those battery dies, someone was saying, I'm not an expert in those vehicles. They're saying that those batteries are so expensive. Sometimes it's better to buy a new one. Do you think that's also another issue that can occur? And do we have the right ways of recycling those batteries? From your knowledge of
Um,
environmentalism.
I think, well, the first part is right. Is sometimes it'll be easier to buy a new one. Because the cost is something so exorbitant just to be able to get a new battery. Something maybe three quarters of the cost of the car. Everything else is just the car, the shell. And it really doesn't cost Elon that much to be able to make the rest, but the battery is really where it's at, which is where he spent the majority of his money developing those plants to be able to make those batteries last um, and become viable. But I think at the same time, when one looks at it, how best does one look at it and say this battery here? How can I make that more viable once again, or how can I recycle that? Anything when you are able to do that, it's not as challenging as nuclear waste. That's for certain. But I think ultimately you should be able to get it done. It shouldn't be too much of a challenge. I just think it needs a bit of research, and maybe the people who design it know the best way to remove all the charge and then just ultimately recycle it once again. And I think that's something that can be done. It would improve sustainability if you're able to put it back into cycle and have it back in another Tesla within a couple months.
Okay.
Sure.
And in thoughts of electric vehicles, what is your opinion on the new electric buses that we brought into Barbados? Are you a fan of them? Are you a little skeptical? Are you like me, kind of 50-50? What's your opinion on the new buses that we brought into Barbados?
I like them. But I've also the few times I've left home, I haven't seen any. But to
I
my
don't think they're on the
dismay,
road yet. I don't think they're on the road. I think they gotta get certification first, or well, license and registration
okay,
first. But
cool. But I was just also gonna say I'm always on the highway, so odds of me seeing one is probably next to none. Um, but I like them. It's progress forward, and I think the amount of buses we now brought in has put us like number two in Latin America and Caribbean, which is per
well,
capita, I should say. Um, in terms of the individuals who are able now to be able to say Barbados is moving in the right step forward. And I think it's credit to our Prime Minister, honestly. It's a direction we need to move in. We need to meet our net zero targets, carbon emission targets, especially.
who's great? These targets, Mr. M.
The targets, you're heading me into a different direction, but
I'm just curious.
um,
Is this
the
Barbados?
targets.
Are they set by Barbados CARICOM or by international committee?
Okay, well, firstly, let's in to run through it very quickly. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals are to be achieved by 2030. You have the nationally determined contributions as well as the voluntary national review. And I think Barbados not too long recently did their national review. But basically, what the government will do is take this information and decide what targets they want to meet by a certain time. And their areas are processes or benchmarks along the line that they need to match up with. And I think Barbados was recent, and I'm not sure if we passed or not. I think, from what I understand, we did. And you recognize that there's a direction you want to move in. Basically, it's basically cutting down on the national carbon emissions, basically from light and power, water authority, national institutions, the amount of water being used, the amount of electricity being consumed, and where it's and being consumed from, whether it's oil or otherwise, hydrothermal, alternative energy, so on and so forth. Um, so when you look at that and then you compare it to the buses, there's less carbon emission coming from the National Transportation Agency, or the Transport Board. In terms of that's not coming. If we could tackle the minibus sector next, that would be good. And some of them may be starting to move in that way. In terms of there'll be no real challenges coming from public transportation in relation to carbon emissions. But one thing I do like about the new electric vehicles is that it's not just carbon emissions friendly, but it is more of a international accredited direction, especially in helping people with disabilities.
That's one thing
Because
I do like about those buses that
yeah,
I think that's one thing Barcelona we have neglected for a long time. Are
we have.
differently I say differently able members of society. I don't think we have done enough to assist those persons in everyday life. So it's good to see that that's being done to assist the differently able in Barbados.
Exactly. So I do like that. And I'm glad that that's the direction we moved in. So we are making progress in terms of sustainability, but we have a long way to go. As I said, the wheel is slowly turning.
You said something
So
that
yeah.
I never thought. Does carbon emissions include like water usage?
Carbon emissions can include water usage because ultimately, what is pumping the power plants or the plants that pump out the water, I should say. Why is my language failing me? But um, the plants that pump out the water, what is powering those? And ultimately, what you recognize, what is powering the light and power. So you will see some areas, and it's when in Barbados when electricity goes off, you realize that water also goes off because there's no more power going to that plant. Luckily, we are in some areas able to get past it because they are able to take them off the grid. It sometimes use more hydraulic or um, functions differently, but ultimately, it's a situation where carbon emissions can come through water usage.
Oh, I was not aware of that. I thought it was just like burning gasoline and tires and stuff. I didn't know it was actually
Yeah,
use of water.
yeah. But what you got and what is powering that as well. So you gotta look up the line as well as to what is the thing before that.
And
Hmm.
one last thing before you go, what industries do you think Barbados should invest in for environmental? You know, because look, whether you like it or not, that's the where we're going for at least the next at minimum 50 years, right? I think this is a push that would be at least 50 years long. What industry do you think Barbados should use to capitalize on? Do you think it should be electric vehicles, alternate forms of fuel, solar power? What do you think that Barbados should look at? Battery manufacturing? What do you think Barbados should get in?
Considering how everybody direction Barbados is going, Barbados should get into all. I don't think there should be a stone left unturned. We need to be able to look at it and say, yeah, we want to be able to create batteries. We want to be able to design vehicles, especially buses, and utilize that effectively. I don't see a reason why we can't design our buses effectively. I don't think people do it locally. So we need to bring down the cost of production or assist where we can. I think we need to be able to say, ultimately, let's look at not just solar power, but alternative methods of power, including hydrothermal. Um, let's look at wind. Let's look at what we can in terms of just not relying on one, because when one goes down, it's a challenge. When one presents itself, like if suddenly wind will stop blowing, then we got a problem. And the whole world will have a problem. But
One thing, so you know we've been relying on oil for so long. Do you think oil sticks is so it's hard to remove in society because how easy it is to use? When a lot of alternate forms of energy seem kind of challenging, like solar says,
um,
well, you got sun got to be out, wind got to blow. Gasoline is just shove it in your car, shove it in your generator. Do you think that there could also be another form of energy that could be seen as an easier way of doing it, but simple as well? That maybe that we should look into developing. I know some good to play with algae and all kind of stuff like that, but do you think that the
um,
so two questions? Do you think that the ease of gasoline or fossil fuels or whatever you want to use is holding back the push in sustainable energy? Number one, and number two, do you think there also needs to be a way of making sustainable energy very convenient to the end user?
okay. So I think in a way to answer both questions in one. Um, Ultimately, the best way that you could go forward right now for the Caribbean in terms of making energy the best is basically a situation where you rely on what you have. And I think that's a situation where you could say, for right now, that's solar power. If you want to provide a backup to that, go hydrothermal. And you know that some people would say that that's not really feasible for Barbados, but I think there was an offer on the table back in the day where St. Vincent was willing to help Barbados in that area
Mm-hmm.
because that's a volcanic kind of situation there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you are in that situation, you could provide it. Most people are just worried about the light turning on in their house, the fan blowing, the air condition,
Mm-hmm.
being able to put food on the table depending on what type of stove they have. They don't sit down and like, I wonder if we got enough oil in the country today to power the power plants.
Mm-hmm.
People don't study that. So if you are able to take your country off of oil 100%, people won't care. And ultimately, it's a situation that once you're able to become effective, being able to use whatever alternative methods that have become mainstream, whether it's solar and you have batteries and then you implement those batteries to last a while and you repeat as necessary, whether it's at a national level with massive amounts of batteries or if it's at an individual host level or if it's at parish level or community level, who knows? But it's possible. And then you can repeat as necessary as go on until you're able to go 100%. And then if that fails or that triggers the issue, then you can switch to your backup.
Mm-hmm.
Um, which ultimately we hope wouldn't be oil, but it could be something like that if necessary. And then once you're able to do that, a society wouldn't really be a challenge. So, but right now, oil is a problem in terms of we haven't developed that sort of large scale ability to be able to do that because we haven't invested in it. Many countries out there in Europe, the Middle East, are able to do that because they're able to invest in it, and it's basically goes back to a point that I mentioned before when I spoke about sustainability bonds and green bonds. Because if you're able to approach the right bank with the right program at the end of the day, they say, you know what, this is something I can invest in,
Mm-hmm.
and they give you money on because it's a bond,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you can invest in these types of initiatives. If we were to go to IMF and say we want to do that, they will be willing to do that as well. The World Bank has green bonds as well. And it depends on what you want to do to be able to say, you know what, I want to invest in these things to be able to make my country better. But we just need the right type of leadership. But once again, not discrediting the Prime Minister, she has her priorities. So maybe she'll do it in year 10 or maybe year 15. Who
Right, right,
knows?
right. One other thing, with the green bonds, was it? I heard something that some countries who were not meeting their quote unquote carbon standards were selling bonds off to other countries or something like that, so they could meet them. Do you have any knowledge of that?
Um, I've heard of it. I haven't read much about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a situation that when one looks into it, you do have there's a terminology for it, but when one looks at it, it's not something that is beyond something because ultimately it's a benchmark you have to meet. And if you are able to say, I want to meet this in sake of meeting this, I want to sell this bond to you so that you can assist me in this area, then fine. But ultimately, I think when we look at it, it's a situation that we need to look at the existing um, oil monopoly, such as people of OPEC,
Mm-hmm.
and look at exactly as to how best they are looking to continue to push oil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Oil is the easiest form for people to say, you know, this is what I want to do.
Right,
This is how the best way you should continue to run your country.
right.
And when you look at it,
It's a
it's going to
proven
be a
method.
challenge.
It's a proven method.
Exactly, it's
It's
a
a very
proven
proven
method.
method. Like, uh-huh.
Yeah. So, but we saw that when COVID came around, and then suddenly the world stopped, how oil plummeted, and we sat down and we were like, yeah, this is the end of the oil monopoly. But
Do you believe it's
as
the end of our monopoly, or you think that they would transition into something else?
well, when firstly we saw the end, but then we saw how oil shot back up
Right,
because it
right.
was a quick reinvestment, and persons at the top of OPEC and the best countries came over and say, you know what, we need to get the world start growing again because people realize that there's no traffic on the streets, there's nobody to put gas in their car, there's no cargo moving, there's no planes flying. So this is the challenge,
Mm,
but ultimately, and the best way to do it, like any other company,
mm,
if they realize that it's a situation where they are losing themselves,
mm,
they will diverse or transition into another area.
mm,
And you'll be surprised. You will realize, and if you probably dig deep enough, you will see that OPEC is probably doing something into researching new and sustainable energy
mm.
because ultimately companies need to be at the forefront.
Do, do you think OPEC will rebrand gasoline in another method to where it would probably be a more efficient burning fuel and they would still have ways of generating revenue? Even
Yeah, ultimately, I think is in the process already, and I think there may be ideas already because if you look at this new, less emissive way of burning fuel,
mhm,
and it's clean. It's this clean fuel as we could look at it. This clean kerosene, this clean oil. Um, through the process we make it and we pass on that cost once again. I think you would see a bit of a setback because people will be like, "This is oil, but it's burning clean now. It's not really emitting anything."
mhm,
Maybe we don't have to rely solely on solar power once again. This already works, as we said just now. It's a proven method.
mhm,
Let's keep using it,
mhm.
and
Because
you can see that happening.
if you look at gasoline, even in cars from like let's say 1970s to now, it is a lot cleaner burning fuel now than back then. So
Exactly.
would these guys evolve to say in next 20 years? Can gasoline? I don't know. I know the EU wants to stop the sale of new internal combustion engine cars, but we all know how politics work. There's a lot of money at stake. Can they come
Mm-hmm.
with something that appeases the environmentalists to a point, but still keeps the traditional automakers and the owners of gas stations and other farms of oil happy? Maybe I don't know. It's something else that I think I'll have you back on. We could discuss it on another show. I know there's thoughts
Yeah.
of carbon capture is another way of making sustaining these other parts such as aircraft that you can't switch over to battery powered as of yet, or even certain people have classic vehicles to keep those running but make them fuel efficient. So
Exactly.
there's a lot of different things that can happen, and all I would like to say is I want innovation. I just don't want to let's just stick on one thing and not the other because I think there's a lot of things that could be done with batteries. I think isn't being pushed enough. I think there's a lot of other things to do with other forms of fuel that isn't being pushed enough. So I like to see these things being pushed and give it like the day and give it consumer the choice.
Yeah, the innovation is happening. The problem with innovation is always at the end of the day, as I hear almost every day, is cost.
Of course, yeah.
You can't. A lot of people can't achieve a lot of what they want to do because cost, and nobody wants to fund the things that they don't believe will work.
Right. And
So,
before we switch on topic, I know Kev must be dropping asleep.
Mm-mm-mm. I hear, man. I hear.
Do you think COVID has pushed back the development in sustainable fuels in certain countries around the world? As in, with the economies being battered, do you think that the money that was put into research into alternative fuels will be pushed back due to the countries not having enough money? And they say, look, this rubber gas for another, instead of doing things in 2030, we're doing 2035 or 2040. Do you think that COVID would have affected the implementation of alternative forms of energy or propulsion, or however you want to phrase it?
um, COVID definitely brought a lot of different things to the world that many people weren't expecting at the beginning of January. January 1st, 2020, we all went to sleep, all woke up,
Mm-hmm.
um, expecting this to be our year,
Mm-hmm.
and then COVID
Well,
happened.
it was Liverpool year, so that phrase did come true for some a group of people. If finally
Well,
did after
true,
30 years, but it did work for a group of people.
true,
Mm-hmm.
and we saw what COVID did, and we saw what it was capable of, and we looked at it and we said, um, how best do we catch up when this is over? And I think we are in a way still asking ourselves that. Many people who want to be able to bring a difference in terms of new technologies, new fields, new ways of doing things,
Mm-hmm.
have had to move from the practical to the theoretical.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've been closed in our house unless they've had a lab
Mm-hmm.
or something that they can work from at home, they've had to be able to either use computer simulations or put themselves in a situation where they've had to think through ideas. And I think many of us have had to do it in terms of keeping ourselves mentally adept or conscious of what we do day to day. Um, so how best do we move forward from these challenges? And many have looked at COVID and said, I don't know. Where's the money going to come from? Because ultimately now this money has to be spent to take the world out of this depression it's in, and what was once earmarked for research and innovation will now have to be reassigned to buying more fuel, or to be able to put more money into small businesses
Right.
so that they can grow again. Because even in Barbados, unemployment was dropped as far as 40%.
Yeah.
And I've said it here before, I believe, but I've said it in other areas that I believe that the Prime Minister should have implemented methods in terms of paying people a personal amount of money so that they can go and buy things to keep them going. I've seen it done either at a tokenistic level or a monetary level, or maybe in some ways at in-kind level, and in other countries. And I believe we needed to do something like that. But basically, in Barbados, if you didn't have a job or you didn't pay NAS and then became an employee, you had to start all. And I think that was one of the biggest challenges. And how can Barbados invest in research and innovation when there's no money being earmarked? I don't know. How can we look towards green fuel or clean burning fuel or new methods of burning research and innovation in terms of cars or batteries or whatever is going to be a challenge. I can't say for sure exactly how best, but I know in answering this question in a forum recently, we have a lot of catching up to do, and I don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but
So
we
the
have
catch up to
to.
do was before COVID, or this is due to COVID?
Um, it was before COVID. COVID just exacerbated the effect. Because we saw for COVID, we saw how broken, how fragile our systems are. Like if you look at the US now, we
And,
see the strain
yeah,
in the hospitals.
and United States cases are going back up again.
Exactly.
So
And then the question, but I want to answer this point first, and it shows the flaw of capitalism, especially under the current leadership, is that if you have to be hospitalized and you are a person of color, and you didn't necessarily have the best job, how are you going to pay a $16,000 bill?
that's always been a problem in the United States with healthcare that I think needs to be. I always say if you're paying taxes, you get free healthcare, but I just
Exactly.
a Bajan man. I don't know.
So
Either tax free,
that's a
but
that's a whole other conversation.
yeah, I mean, we can always have that another time. I know I kept dropping asleep, so I know
Right here, man.
we're
Right here.
he's very aggressive. So, we're let's run this off on some a quick little blast. Any other questions the live chat has, we can answer. Probably finish them at the end. All right, let's move on here quickly. MotoGP, we're going back on the fun stuff. Thanks for that. Talk, Mr. M. I really appreciate it.
No problem.
Yeah, open my eyes to a lot of different things. We got started. The first MotoGP race was held today, and for the first time, Mr. Fabio Quartararo, what's his name? Kev
Quartararo, yeah, man. Yeah.
has won a race. My boy, he's finally done it. Kev, how you feel about this, man? You know me. I know I butcher this guy's name all the time. I just call him Fabio, but I saw him a couple years ago. I know people were giving a little bit of stick because they expect him to rise through the ranks a bit faster. But I always thought that he has a potential to do well. So hopefully eventually to conquer the, and the throne and become a world champion. And today he's finally got his first win. How you feel about that, man?
Man, right. Yeah, man. I just call him Fabio too for short. It's been a long time coming though, because he's so talented, right? I mean, he's still only like 21 or something, but the win was always on cards though. I mean, this is what 3 full seasons that he was in MotoGP now, and
This third season, yeah.
he had some podiums and stuff. Like I think persons were expecting him to get the win, last season for sure, but he didn't.
Mhm.
But he started off the season with a bang, man.
And it was a good race too. He led every lap. It was a controlled
Yeah,
race. He put some distance
yeah.
between him and what Jerry man here from I just forget this guy name all the time. Not
But
Jefferson.
Maverick, you mean Maverick Vinales? You
Yeah,
mean?
Vinales.
Yeah,
Vinales to me, I think he was like wrong tight, that soft type front to me. I don't think it was effective for him. We saw it went off
yeah.
for Rossi as well. He was
Hmm.
also holding off Milner as well. So I think he did
Yeah,
a very good job. He was passed initially at first by Mark Marquez.
yeah.
And then he was also passed, but wait, he was passed even by Milner. I think he was at fourth at one point.
He actually started the race pretty bad.
Yeah,
He dropped down to
yeah,
about fourth or fifth.
yeah. But then
He was
he
going,
roared back pretty well. So
yeah, he was good. Going down the pecking order, and then we all thought that Marquez, after he took the lead, he would do the usual checkout, put a couple of seconds on the rest of the field, but he went down.
Fabio did a mark.
Fabio, yeah, basically, but after he did a mark after Marquez had dropped out.
Yeah, my bad. He didn't lead every lap, but he led the majority of the race. My bad. He did every lap like that.
Majority,
Yeah,
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
But it was a good start. It was a good start
And it was very
to the
exciting race. It
season.
was very exciting race as well. A lot of passing and stuff.
Yeah,
Talking
yeah,
about
man.
Mark. Mark took a bit of a fall.
Yeah,
Sorry for the blurry image, guys, but I knew one I could have snagged pretty quickly. A pretty nasty fall. Kev, do you think Mark is out for a couple races, or you think he'll be back up for running pretty
man.
soon?
Usually, I mean, he's
Because
accustomed.
this time that we thought this guy was this guy come back. So
I know he's so accustomed to living on the edge, right? I
mhm,
mean, he take a lot of risks and stuff.
mhm.
But however, I don't know. He's almost like a robot or a metal man or so. I don't know. He's recovered really quickly, but this time I don't know. He looked different though. He
Yeah,
looked like he was in some serious pain.
yeah.
The wrists
I heard some people
and
say
the back.
they broke his arms. I'm not too sure. I have to follow up on that. But I heard people say he broke his arm, and then that means he have to out for about 2 3 months. And he's a guy who know a lot of these things. That'll be out for what, right? About 2 3 months on a broken arm.
Probably, yeah, 2 3 months.
Yeah, and with the season being so condensed, I mean, that's probably season over for him. We probably could be looking down the barrel of a new world champion for the first time in about 7 8 seasons.
A couple of seasons. I can't remember the last. It's been a while, but yeah, man. I mean, barring a remarkable comeback, I don't see you know how he could get back in time to. I don't know how he would get it done,
Mm-hmm.
but he usually does the impossible. So we will have to wait and see. But I think it's going to be very difficult now from this stage.
He'll be your first
Yeah,
new champion since Lorenzo did it in 2015. Yeah,
2015.
because Lorenzo was
Okay,
the only guy to brought his dominance after he won seven in that time period and in 7 8
right.
years. So
That's crazy, man.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Thoughts on his brother? Do you think people are giving his brother a little too much stick? Because it's his first Grand Prix and he was seen to have a bit of trouble on the bike.
yeah, I think like the expectations a bit too high.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he and Marquez on two completely different bikes.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Marquez too Marquez is very unique. He's very. I don't think his brother's as gifted naturally as Mark is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to take his brother a bit more time to get accustomed. Whereas from the get go, I mean, his brother did come 12. This is not a bad start.
Mm-hmm. True. For the first
Really,
race, not bad.
it's not a bad start. But people need to remember too that Marquez is on a way more powerful bike.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be
But
it'll be easier for him.
I think technically they same team though, and the Repsol Honda team. I think they are.
I think it's the same team.
Yeah, but you gotta remember. But one thing about Marquez, he's very good on that bike, but a lot of his other teammates have struggled. I think, but in last couple
Yeah,
seasons, Danny Petroza kind of struggled on it. Beyond
yeah,
expected for Lorenzo to do very well. It was a terrible year. He actually hung up his boots at the end of last year. So
yeah. Yeah,
that Honda is not a very easy bike to handle. So
Nope. No.
I mean, it could be very difficult for Alex as well. So I wish him best of luck. I mean, everyone knows as a bit of Marcus here, but I kind of like Alex. I want to say young man shine. So I wish the young
Yeah.
man the best of luck. Has Honda announced his replacement or not as yet?
You mean
Mark's
you mean
replacement, because he at least has to be out for a couple of races at minimum. So
nah, I haven't heard any news or anything like that yet.
right,
Yeah.
and then no, I think also Renz is out. 'Cause he also suffered an injury.
Yeah, he had a crash as well too. I mean,
That
he
my
is potentially, yeah,
I like
you
Renz. That
know,
my boy. That my boy.
yeah, he's potentially, he usually makes the podium and stuff. So,
Yeah, he need to leave Suzuki though, and there's only three bikes that are ready. But
mhm.
by your side, as a Yamaha fan, boy.
So there's only 3 bikes.
Yamaha, Honda, and Ducati. I don't mess with
The
the rest of
Cathy,
it.
yeah,
Even like Ducati's kind of
so,
trashing corners, but it is what it is.
yeah, man. So he will. I don't know. Yeah,
All right.
we gotta see how the season progresses.
Okay. And we're
Hmm.
gonna finish it off now. Real Madrid have won their 35th La Liga title. After a relatively rough start to the season, the Los Blancos have wrapped up the title in style since the restart. They've won almost every game except for the last game today, but the season had already finished at that point. As a Real Madrid fan, Mr. Kev, how you feeling, man? I got a little love for Los Blancos. So
Yeah,
happy for you, man. How you feel about the win, man?
you're gonna be very surprised by this, right? But
Mm.
to me, it almost eclipses
Don't say tr-
winning the
don't say that
win,
repeat. Don't say repeat. Don't dare say that
no,
repeat.
no, I'm not gonna say a repeat, but I mean like individually, like winning the Champions League, it almost feels like I don't know. It feels like more important to me for Zidane in terms of like his legacy, or like because Madrid hasn't done it since 2017,
Right, and I had a poor
and
run
then
of farm leading up into it as well. I mean, the
yeah,
last decade and a half has been dominated by Barcelona, so
pretty much. I mean, they won like what 7 in the last 10 or 8 of the
something like that,
last
some
10, which
crazy
is
number like that.
crazy. So I think last time that Madrid won the league prior to 2017 was when I think Mourinho was there in 2013.
Yeah, Mourinho. Yeah,
So
'cause I saw he did in a minute.
right. So I mean, but the level, I mean, it's probably one of the lowest scoring title wins in the last 10 years, though.
A win is a win.
Usually, yeah. I mean, but I say that to say that the dominance that Spain had in the Champions League
Mm-hmm.
last season
Mm-hmm.
and a bit of this season, it has dropped a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because every year you will see a Spanish team winning the Champions League or
Or,
competing for the title.
yeah, or even winning Europa League when the years that they didn't win the Champions League.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean Sevilla they got the most Europa Leagues, like a record 5 or
And
something. So
Atletico Madrid had a great run in as well. So,
yeah, so I know to me, in my opinion, the level has dropped. I
mm-hmm.
mean, last year we had a final with two Premier League teams. One which deserved to be in the final, the other to me was a bit of luck, but nevertheless, it is what it is. So we have to see how the season finishes now with the Champions League. But to me, it seems like the tide has swung. Like
Mm-hmm.
changing at the guard now in terms of the Europe. So we'll see. We'll
Okay.
see how the fact of Madrid winning the title. But I would say though it's I can't say per se it's a better feeling, but it's a very good feeling that they won it against none other than UEFA loners, So and I hope our boy is listening to the podcast. Maybe he's not, but yeah,
He catch a replay.
it was well deserved, regardless of what people would say.
Okay.
It was well deserved for Madrid.
Okay.
Yeah.
My thing is, do you think that y'all could overturn the deficit to Man City? And my next question is, what do you think Madrid needs to do to improve for next season?
Right. Okay. So I think it's very possible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like I the way how Arsenal played against Man City.
Mm-hmm.
You basically sometimes Man City will have majority ball, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they lack creativity.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were a bit unlucky in the match, so they hit the post a couple times,
Mm-hmm.
and they just wasn't finding the end result.
Mm-hmm.
That final ball in the final third. So if
Right.
you could get them, if you could, play them in such a way that they have possession but they're not doing anything, tap. I do think if Madrid could execute that,
Mm-hmm.
they have a very good chance of going through.
Correct.
Um, in regards to the other question was,
What do you think Madrid needs to improve for next season?
oh, for next season, I think they really have to get Hazard firing though.
Mm-hmm.
He had one or two games, but with injuries and lack of consistency,
Mm-hmm.
he had to make up to par. The midfield and defense is pretty good, but the attack is very the usual free flying Madrid was evident this season.
Mm-hmm.
Past season had Ronaldo, Bill, Benzema.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to, if there's any signing that needs to be made, it needs to be in the attacking area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Preferably probably Mbappe, but we don't know how that will go. But I think he's signing for Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
Still looking at the likes of Pogba, although he's aging a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
I think he would also be a great signing
Mm-hmm.
for Madrid. But yeah, I think obviously Asensio is back now.
Yeah.
They have Vinicius coming up. You know, these
That that
attacking
that, that
players just
boy's
need.
annoying. That boy's annoying me though, Kev.
Yeah, he needs to be more consistent though. He
Mm-hmm.
he's a good player, but he needs a little bit more maturity in his gameplay and decision making.
Mm-hmm.
But he's very, we can't deny that he's very talented though.
Mm-hmm.
We can't deny that fact.
All right.
But I know, hopefully Zidane could, talk to him more, coach him, get the coaching staff to, get his mind right. But
Mm-hmm.
he's very talented. But however, he needs to really, buckle down and make some better decisions and stuff like that. The thing is too, how would he play when Hazard is fully fit if they play in the same ring? So
True. True. True.
that's another debate too. You
True.
understand? So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see.
All right, Mr. M. Any thoughts on Real winning the league?
I I have not watched football in ages, and I am not even close to being able to comment on this.
All right,
Once
not a problem,
I
man.
don't know.
Not a
Yeah.
problem. All right, all right. You got a funnel coming to the end of the show. I got a couple of questions for you, Mr. This primary to Mr. M. Father, this is from Mr. Father Pork. Mr. Father Pork asks, "How can we afford it all?" I assume he's talking about the energy stuff. We have issues with renewable energy materials. I will read that
How
correctly.
can we afford it all?
So I believe
Um,
he's trying to forget. I think he's trying to ask how can we afford to switch into more alternative fuels because we're having issues with current forms of reliable energy materials. So probably saying like gathering solar panels, utilizing wind, solar. I think like that's what he's trying to say.
well, the question is interesting, but you have to be able to say what exactly are our priorities as a country or as a planet. Um, and I have a fundamental issue with this thing called money, but I that's a whole other discussion. But I think we need to be able to say we need to invest in the research. We
Mm-hmm,
need to be innovative in the way we go about things,
mm-hmm,
and we need to be able to say this is right now an issue.
mm-hmm,
Let's deal with this. And the best way to do that is one of the ways, not venture capitalism,
mm-hmm,
not through taxes, but through ways of sustainable finance. And I've said it before, if you are looking towards ways of investing, you can do this through green bonds, or you can do this through sustainability bonds,
mm-hmm,
which have allowed for many countries to be able to do stuff like crazy.
mm-hmm,
Um, there's over $1 trillion in a green bond and sustainable market
mm-hmm.
together.
Right.
You can imagine what $1 trillion can do if Barbados was to say, you know what, I want to tap into this a little bit. I'm not saying Barbados end up with $1 trillion. I'm just saying we
He
just
has to spell
need
it right. He has to spell it
enough.
wrong, but we understand.
Yeah, we could just make the right moves. We can invest in it, and we can do what we can to say. Um, so affording it. Let's look at sustainable finance. Let's look at investing or putting our money in ways that we can actually afford and see exactly what we can do for a while, and then making it a reality. Um, Reliable raw materials. I think that's what you mentioned.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. He has.
Um,
We have issues with reliable raw materials.
well, that's a problem because ultimately, yeah, is a direction where you have to be able to take these materials now and transform them into something.
Mm.
As the question would have asked earlier about graphite or something to do with silicon versus something else, you got to
Silicon
be able
graphite
to
versus
figure out.
gallium graphite.
Right, you got to be able to figure out which one will be the best, and there's always going to be something that is better than the last thing. You won't get the best product initially,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to be able to say, this is the best thing we can look at,
Mm-hmm.
and we can focus going down that road as we look at these particular areas or issues as they present themselves.
Okay. I got another question for you from Father Port again. Well, another comment he said, we need to invest in hydroelectricity. Do you think that's viable, Mr. M?
It's a good method, especially for a country that's surrounded by water.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the biggest challenges to hydroelectric, I remember in discussion with somebody who's expert in this area, was that Barbados doesn't have what you call a break. And you would see that areas where we do hydroelectricity, it always is like a waterfall that
Mm-hmm.
creates that speed as it goes through the system.
Mm-hmm.
If we invest in hydroelectricity, we need to be able to create that break. So whether we're going to create it at surface level, clear away some water and allow the water to fall through as it feeds through the system and back up, or are we going to create a plant that allows it or forces it through at speed in order to keep the system up at a certain level? Um, I think that's the area where we need to be able to figure that out. And once we figure that out, hydroelectricity would be something else that we could also tap into.
Okay. Fruition, he mentioned that wind slash solar farms in areas that we have had housing developments built. Oh, I think he's saying that in areas such as North of Barbados where we had the opportunity to put on solar and wind farms, we have placed housing.
Mhm.
Is housing? Do you think housing has played a negative impact in the development of sustainable energy in Barbados, and how should we look to rectify that?
No, I don't think housing has, but we can look at exactly how Barbados is only 166 square miles.
Mm,
I've said it before, and you probably heard me say it. I think many other people have heard me say, but instead of expanding or certain healthcare plans or
mm,
look at exactly how best we can try to expand the economy,
mm,
we need to make that investment
mm,
in expanding the country. And I say that to say we need to be able to build islands offshore
mm.
that are sustainable and that are um
But would it not have damaged the like animal, the marine life in the ocean?
not necessarily. If you are able to do it once again sustainably
Mm,
and you know exactly how it's been drafted and planned out effectively,
mm,
it's a good method.
mm,
Many countries are being able to create what you call atolls or um, these offshore countries in order to do stuff. And if you're able to say settle and build something that is environmentally friendly, and repurpose some sand and be able to build solar farms on it, then you and have that run into the country,
mm.
maybe just off Pepper Island or something,
Right.
or maybe up north where you may get more wind or something, and have it feed back into the country. You are able to have these housing developments because housing developments was a priority coming out of the 1930s,
Mm,
as we've known coming into Barbados, and still is a challenge today.
mm,
For people to be able to rest their head at night.
mm,
Um, And then if you'd be able to say, you know what, let's create these islands offshore, and we could put tourism over there, and then you could put alternative energy over here, and you could put another business over here, maybe grow some plants or whatever. You can do that.
Right.
Barbados has a lot of space over into the Atlantic. We are literally in the Atlantic. We could go in any direction we want.
Yeah, technically Barbados is like outside the Caribbean like, island chain. And,
Exactly.
well, not technically, we are outside the Caribbean island chain.
Yeah, boy.
So
Part
we can do
that
that.
would be so weird compared to everywhere else in Caribbean. All right, Mr. Father Port says the issue with Bajans is that they want an immediate return on investment. Our society operates that way, and he says we can do what Australia is doing, using currents off the east coast to turn them.
Exactly. And that is something that we can do. I know we cry all the time for desalination. We need to have a desalination plant out there,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe if we could also expand that plant to be able to have a capacity to be able to work towards hydroelectric,
Mm-hmm.
then we could do that.
Mm-hmm.
As I said, I'm not also against expanding the country.
Mm-hmm.
We could do that. Maybe build that off the west coast where it's less turbulent, and then make sure that they're resilient to any natural disasters,
Mm-hmm.
and we can go from there. And then just have these methods being adopted. I think once we've done the investment, we've seen the return. I understand that the return will come in a while, maybe not immediately, but maybe 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And it's something that both political parties can agree on,
Mm-hmm.
or all political parties. I think we got like 5 now, then we should be able to get to go.
Do we really have 5? Anyway, all right. I'm not seeing any other questions. I think that's it. I think Kev got some business to handle. I know you got some things to handle, Mr. M. Thank you for coming on, Mr. M. We gotta do it again. Always good to have you on.
No problem.
All right, we got to talk about the big oil and big electricity. I think that's something we could talk about. And that thing you said about money, we have to discuss that at another point. So let me know when you could come on again. We could always run something. Maybe we got to bring on one of the guys in the comments as well. You know, we invite everyone on. They could come on. All right,
Sure.
Mr. Kev Carter.
Yeah, man.
You know what? Lovely show with you, man. We had a good chat with some football and Formula One.
Yeah,
So
man.
and they got some things to handle. So we're gonna wrap up the show. And thank you guys for coming on and viewing. Remember, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. Also, if you're available for your live streams, come on, add some comments. You see, we have some fun today. And just appreciate your love, man. You know, I get some love from y'all, so I really do appreciate it. It means a lot to me. You know, we're a small channel, but I do appreciate your love. So we'll see you all next week. Peace out.
No
Yeah, man.
problem. I head into a Guadalupe invitation.
I can pretend that ain't true.